Welcome to Glamorous Stories. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell for more. Sit tight and let's dive in. Sienna Gray stared at the departure board as the word, "Cancelled," blinked next to Flight 482 to Chicago. Her suitcase stood upright beside her leg, and the coffee she'd grabbed in a rush now sat cold in her hand. She blinked once, twice. Maybe she'd read it wrong. But the announcement soon followed, echoing over the PA system in a cheerful tone that felt mocking. Attention passengers of Flight 482 to Chicago. Due to severe weather conditions, your flight has been cancelled. Please see the desk for rebooking options. A groan rippled through the terminal, but Sienna barely heard it. Her mind was already racing. The conference in Chicago was supposed to be the highlight of her quarter. A keynote panel, a potential promotion opportunity. But it wasn't happening tonight. And for the first time in months, she didn't have a work trip, a hotel booking, or an excuse to be away. She had time. And time meant choices. She could book a hotel nearby and catch the first flight out tomorrow morning. She could call a cab and go back to the office to catch up on emails. Or, her eyes drifted to her phone screen, where a picture of her and Logan smiled back at her from last year's anniversary dinner. She could go home. Maybe I'll surprise him, she murmured, smiling despite herself. It had been so long since they'd had a night together. Just them. No late meetings, no travel, no falling asleep separately. The thought warmed something deep inside her chest. She missed him. God, she missed them. She texted her assistant, letting her know the conference would have to wait. Then she grabbed her suitcase, hailed a cab and slid into the back seat. 24 Greenridge Lane, she told the driver, heart beating a little faster. On the ride home, memories bubbled up like old photographs scattered across her thoughts. The way Logan used to wait up for her when she worked late. The way he'd make pancakes on Sundays and insist they eat them in bed, even when she protested about syrup on the sheets. The way he'd hold her just because. Things had shifted over the last year. It wasn't anyone's fault, or at least that's what she told herself. Work had gotten busier. Logan had been taking on new projects. They were two ships passing in the night, exhausted and distant, still orbiting the same life but rarely colliding. But this was a chance to change that. Maybe tonight could be the start of something new. "You look happy," the driver said suddenly, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Sienna smiled, a little embarrassed. "Just thinking about seeing my husband. He doesn't know I'm coming home." "Ah," the driver chuckled. "Surprise visits. Always interesting." "I hope it's a good kind of interesting," she said, laughing softly. "I think it will be." The city melted away as they crossed the bridge toward the quieter suburbs. It had started raining lightly, soft streaks blurring the windshield. By the time they pulled into her driveway, the world was wrapped in a calm hush. The house looked just as it always did, tidy hedges, soft porch light glowing in the dusk, the faint outline of their bedroom window above. "Thank you," she said, handing the driver a tip before stepping out into the cool night air. As she rolled her suitcase up the walkway, she felt an unexpected surge of nerves. What if he was busy? What if he'd made other plans, thinking she'd be gone? Maybe she should have called first. No, she told herself. This was supposed to be a surprise. Something sweet. Something spontaneous. She unlocked the door quietly and slipped inside. The house was mostly dark, except for a few soft pools of light spilling from the hallway and up the stairs. "Logan?" she called gently, kicking off her shoes. No answer. She smiled to herself. Maybe he'd fallen asleep early. Maybe he was reading in bed. Or maybe she paused. There was a sound. Faint at first but unmistakable. A laugh. A woman's laugh. Sienna froze. Every instinct told her she must be imagining it. Maybe the TV was on. Maybe he had a podcast playing. But then she heard it again, closer this time. Softer. Intimate. And then his voice. Logan's voice. Low, tender, the way he used to speak to her. Her pulse spiked, her heart hammering so loud she could barely hear anything else. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no," but her feet were already moving. She left her suitcase by the door and climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The sound grew clearer. A breathless giggle. The rustle of sheets. Words she couldn't quite make out and maybe didn't want to. She reached the top of the stairs and stood there for a moment, staring at the thin strip of light spilling out from the crack beneath their bedroom door. This was ridiculous. She was jumping to conclusions. Logan loved her. They were just going through a rough patch. She pressed her palm against the door, taking one long, steadying breath. And then she pushed it open. The world slowed. Her mind tried to reject what her eyes were seeing. The bed, their bed, was a tangle of sheets and skin. Logan was there, bare shoulders glistening with sweat, his body pressed against a woman's form beneath him. His hands, the same hands that used to hold her face so gently, were gripping another woman's hips. And the sounds, those soft, intimate sounds, were not coming from her. The room tilted. Her breath caught somewhere between a sob and a scream. And then the scream won. Logan. The word tore out of her like an animal breaking free from a cage. He jerked back, spinning toward her, his face a perfect portrait of panic and guilt. Sienna, wait, he stammered, stumbling out of the bed, grabbing for the sheets. The woman beneath him turned too, clutching the blanket to her chest. Her hair fell forward, hiding her face. For a second Sienna hoped she didn't know her. That maybe this betrayal was easier if it was faceless. But as the woman's gaze lifted and their eyes met, Sienna's stomach dropped through the floor. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a colleague. It wasn't someone random. It was Harper. Her little sister. The girl she'd helped raise. The one she'd shared secrets with, cried with, protected. Sienna? Harper's voice was small. Fragile. But Sienna didn't hear the words. All she heard was the blood rushing in her ears. All she felt was the weight of the universe collapsing in her chest. Her knees buckled. And the world, the marriage, the family, the future she thought she had, shattered in an instant. Sienna didn't know how long she stood there, frozen in the doorway, her breath trapped somewhere between a sob and a scream. Everything around her felt distant. The steady rain tapping against the windows, the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the faint vanilla scent of the candle she'd lit before leaving for the airport. All of it was wrong now. All of it was tainted. Logan was the first to move. He grabbed a shirt from the floor and fumbled to pull it over his head, his face pale and frantic. Sienna, please, he started, stepping toward her. She flinched back as if he'd raised a hand. Don't, she hissed. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. Don't you dare come near me. I can explain, he tried again, desperation thick in his voice. I swear to God it's not what it looks like. A harsh, bitter laugh ripped from her throat. Not what it looks like, she echoed. Because it looks like my husband is in bed with my sister. Harper had pulled the sheets around her, but she didn't try to get dressed. She didn't even look away. Sienna, please, she whispered. Just listen to us. Listen. Sienna snapped. You want me to listen? After what I just walked in on? Her hands were shaking so badly she gripped the doorframe to stay upright. There's nothing you could possibly say that would make this make sense. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Harper said softly, tears spilling down her cheeks. We didn't plan for you to what? To find out. Sienna cut her off, her voice cracking under the weight of betrayal. You were just going to keep sneaking around behind my back? Sleeping with my husband like it was nothing? Logan reached out again and she slapped his hand away. How long? She demanded. Silence. How long? She screamed, the sound ripping through the room like a storm. Logan's shoulders slumped. 6 months, he whispered. Sienna's heart stopped. 6 months. That was before their anniversary. Before the weekend getaway where he'd promised to reconnect. Before the night they'd sat on this very bed and talked about trying for a baby. Oh my God, she breathed, her knees threatening to give way again. You were sleeping with her while you were trying to convince me everything was fine? It wasn't like that, Logan said quickly, guilt etched into every line of his face. We didn't mean for it to happen. It started when, I don't care how it started, she shouted. It happened, Logan. That's all that matters. You betrayed me. And you, she turned on Harper, her voice trembling with rage. You're my sister. My blood. I trusted you. I defended you when Mom said you'd never grow up, when Dad said you'd always be a screw-up. I let you stay in my home. And this is how you repay me. Harper was crying openly now, but Sienna felt no sympathy. The sight of her sister, half naked in her bed, wrapped in sheets that still held her scent, made her stomach churn. I didn't want this, Harper whispered. I swear I didn't. I was lonely and he was. Don't you dare blame this on loneliness, Sienna snapped. There are 1,000 ways to deal with being lonely. Sleeping with your sister's husband isn't one of them. Harper buried her face in her hands. Logan tried to speak again, but Sienna held up a shaking hand to silence him. I want you out, she said, her voice low and cold. Both of you. Right now. Sienna, please, Logan begged. Let me explain. I said out. The scream startled even her. It came from a place she didn't recognize, a deep, raw wound inside her that had been split open. Logan hesitated, looking like he might argue, but one look at her face told him not to. He grabbed his pants and shoes without another word. Harper moved slower, trembling as she slipped out of bed and clutched the blanket around her. She stopped at the doorway, eyes red and pleading. "I love you," she whispered. "I never stopped." Sienna stared at her, numb. "You have a strange way of showing it." Harper's face crumpled, and then she was gone. The sound of their footsteps down the stairs echoed through the empty house. The front door opened, then closed. Silence. Sienna stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the wreckage of her life scattered across the bedroom. The sheets were twisted, the pillows askew, the air heavy with the scent of sweat and betrayal. Her knees finally gave out and she collapsed onto the floor, clutching her chest as sobs racked her body. "Why?" she whispered into the empty room. "Why wasn't I enough?" Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost all meaning. Eventually, she dragged herself to the bathroom and stared at her reflection. Her eyes were red and swollen, her lipstick smudged, her hair tangled from the rain. She looked like a stranger. She splashed cold water on her face, gripping the edge of the sink to steady herself. She couldn't stay here. Not now. Not in this house. Not in this bed. She packed a small overnight bag with shaking hands, just enough clothes for a few days, and walked downstairs. Her suitcase from the airport was still by the door, a cruel reminder of the trip she never took. She left it there. She didn't need it anymore. Outside the rain had stopped. The night was quiet and still, as if mocking her pain. She got into her car, started the engine, and drove with no destination in mind. At a red light, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from Logan. "Logan, please? We need to talk. Don't do anything rash." She deleted it without reading further. Another message came, this one from Harper. "Harper, I'm sorry. Please give me a chance to explain. It's not what you think." Sienna laughed bitterly through her tears. Not what she thought. She'd seen everything. As the light turned green, she pressed harder on the gas, letting the road stretch endlessly ahead of her. All she knew was she couldn't go back. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. The house behind her, the one she and Logan had built together, wasn't home anymore. It was a crime scene. A monument to betrayal. And as the miles rolled by beneath her tires, one thought played over and over in her mind. The flight never took off, but maybe it was never supposed to. The rain started again before dawn, a relentless drizzle that matched the hollow ache in Sienna's chest. She had driven aimlessly for hours after leaving the house, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The city streets had blurred into highways, then empty back roads, and finally a quiet overlook above the river where she parked and cried until her body was too tired to produce any more tears. Now, as the first faint light of morning crept across the horizon, she was still sitting there, engine off, forehead pressed to the steering wheel, feeling like a ghost in her own life. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The tangled sheets. The soft, breathless laughter. Logan's hands where they didn't belong. Harper's eyes, wide with guilt and fear, meeting hers. It replayed on a loop, each detail sharper and more agonizing than the last. And the worst part wasn't even the act itself, though that alone had shattered her. It was the intimacy of it. The familiarity. The way Logan had looked at Harper. The way he had touched her. It wasn't just sex. It was affection. It was something deeper. And that made the knife twist even harder. Her phone had been buzzing on and off all night. Dozens of missed calls from Logan. A handful of texts from Harper. One voicemail from her mother, probably prompted by Harper's panic. Sienna ignored them all. She couldn't speak to anyone. Not yet. Maybe not ever. At some point, she glanced at the clock on her dashboard. 6:43 a.m. The world was waking up, people were going to work, and her life was falling apart. She couldn't sit here forever. She needed to move, to do something, anything, before the numbness swallowed her whole. She turned the ignition and started driving again, though she had no idea where she was going. Home wasn't an option. Not yet. But her office was out of the question too. The thought of pretending to be fine, of smiling and shaking hands and giving presentations, made her want to scream. Instead, she drove to the one place that had always felt safe, her friend Naomi's apartment. Naomi was the kind of friend who never asked questions before pouring a glass of wine. They'd met in college and stayed close through marriages, job changes, and life's chaos. If anyone could help her make sense of this mess, it was Naomi. By the time she pulled into Naomi's building, the rain had slowed to a mist and the sun was peeking through the clouds. She climbed the stairs like someone twice her age and knocked softly on the door. It opened a moment later, revealing Naomi in a robe, hair messy from sleep. "Sienna?" she said, blinking in surprise. "It's 6 in the morning." "I know," Sienna whispered, her voice raw. Can I come in? Naomi's face shifted immediately from confusion to concern. Of course. Come here. She stepped aside and Sienna walked in, setting her bag down before collapsing onto the couch. Naomi sat beside her, studying her face. What happened? For a moment Sienna couldn't speak. The words were too heavy, too sharp to force out. But eventually they came. I came home early, she said, her voice barely a whisper. My flight was cancelled. I thought it would be a surprise. Naomi's eyes softened. And? Sienna swallowed hard. And I found Logan. In our bed. With someone else. Naomi's breath caught. Oh my God. Sienna? It gets worse. Sienna's lips trembled as the next words tumbled out. It was Harper. Silence. For a moment, Naomi didn't even blink. Then she shook her head slowly as if trying to convince herself she'd misheard. Your sister Harper? Sienna nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks again. I walked in on them. Together. In our bed. Jesus Christ, Naomi muttered, anger flashing in her eyes. I swear if I ever see him, I don't even know how to process it, Sienna whispered. I mean, cheating is bad enough. But her? My own sister? The two people I trusted most in the world. Naomi reached for her hand and squeezed it. You don't have to process it right now. You're in shock. Anyone would be. I just keep seeing it, Sienna said, staring at the floor. Over and over again. The way he touched her. The way he looked at her. Like I was already gone. Naomi's jaw tightened. Then he doesn't deserve you. Neither of them do. It's not that simple, Sienna murmured. We built a life together. A home. We had plans. And Harper, God, I helped raise her after Mom left. She's my baby sister. I would have done anything for her. Naomi was quiet for a moment. Then she asked gently, do you want to stay here for a while? Sienna nodded without hesitation. I can't go back there. Not yet. Then don't, Naomi said firmly. You stay here as long as you need. We'll figure it out. Sienna exhaled shakily, some of the tension in her chest easing for the first time in hours. Thank you. You don't have to thank me, Naomi said. This is what friends do. And if you want me to run them both over with my car, I'll do that too. Despite herself, Sienna let out a small, broken laugh. I'll keep that in mind. Naomi wrapped an arm around her, and they sat there in silence for a long time, two women on a couch, one holding the other together when everything else had fallen apart. Eventually Sienna's exhaustion caught up to her, and she drifted into a restless sleep. But even in sleep there was no peace. The images haunted her dreams. Logan's bare skin, Harper's guilty eyes, the betrayal that had poisoned everything she thought was real. When she woke hours later, sunlight was streaming through the blinds, and her phone was buzzing again. Another message from Logan. Another from Harper. And one from her mother. Mom, Harper called me crying. What's going on? Please call me. Sienna stared at the screen, her stomach churning. The world was still moving, still spinning as if nothing had happened. But her life, the life she'd spent years building, had stopped. She placed the phone face down on the table and curled up on the couch again, pulling the blanket around her. For now she didn't need answers. She didn't need closure. She just needed the world to leave her alone. And so she closed her eyes and let the rain outside drown out the noise of everything that had been broken beyond repair. The days that followed blurred into one another, an endless, colorless stretch of hours that Sienna moved through like a ghost. She slept too much and ate too little. She ignored every call, every message. Logan's texts piled up. Please talk to me. Please come home. We need to fix this. Harper's were worse. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Please let me explain. Sienna deleted them all without reading past the first few words. She wasn't ready to hear explanations. She wasn't sure she ever would be. Naomi hovered, gentle but firm, making sure she ate at least one proper meal a day, coaxing her out of bed when she wanted to stay buried under the blankets. You're grieving, Naomi said one morning, sliding a cup of tea across the table. This is what grief looks like. And betrayal is a kind of death. Sienna stared into the steaming cup, silent. Naomi sighed. You can't stay here forever, you know? I know, Sienna murmured. But I can't go back either. Then maybe it's time to confront it, Naomi suggested carefully. Not for them, for you. You need answers before you can decide what comes next. The thought made Sienna's stomach twist, but she knew Naomi was right. She couldn't spend the rest of her life hiding from the truth. She had to face it, the man who broke her trust and the sister who shattered her heart. And she had to hear why. So, 3 days after the betrayal, she sent a single message. Sienna, meet me. Tomorrow. No. At the house. She didn't expect Logan to reply so quickly. Logan, I'll be there. Thank you. Harper responded too within minutes. Harper, I'll come. I swear I'll explain everything. That night, sleep eluded Sienna. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind played scenes from their shared past. Birthday parties and family dinners, movie nights and lazy Sundays. Moments that once brought warmth now felt like evidence of a lie she hadn't known she was living. When morning came, she dressed with shaky hands, choosing jeans and a simple sweater. She didn't want to look too put together. This wasn't about appearances. It was about truth. The house looked different when she pulled into the driveway. The windows were dark, the garden unkempt. Even the front door seemed to sag on its hinges. It wasn't home anymore. It was just a building full of ghosts. She stood on the porch for a long moment before unlocking the door and stepping inside. The familiar scent of cedar and citrus wrapped around her, and she almost turned and walked back out. But she didn't. She squared her shoulders and went to the living room. Logan was already there, sitting on the edge of the couch. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot, his face drawn and pale. He stood when he saw her. Sienna, sit, she said flatly. He did. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. She stared at him for a long time, searching for the man she'd loved, the man she'd built a life with. But all she saw was a stranger. How long have you been planning to tell me? She asked finally. He swallowed hard. We weren't planning anything. It wasn't like that. Then what was it? She demanded. Because 6 months is not a mistake, Logan. That's a decision. Over and over again. He dragged a hand through his hair. It started when you were away. You were always gone, always busy. And I felt invisible. Harper was here, she listened, she cared. One night we were drinking and it just happened. Sienna's stomach twisted. And you just kept happening for half a year? He flinched. I hated myself for it every time. I wanted to stop, but you didn't. Her voice cracked. You didn't stop. Because you chose not to. Tears burned his eyes. I still love you. She laughed bitterly. No. You love the idea of me. You love the convenience of me. But you don't betray someone you truly love. Before he could respond, the front door opened. Harper stepped in quietly, dressed in a simple cardigan and jeans, her hair pulled back like she was trying to look small. Hi, she whispered. Sienna's heart slammed against her ribs. Seeing her sister here, in this space, was almost unbearable. Don't hi me, she said coldly. Harper nodded, eyes brimming with tears. I deserve that. You deserve worse. I know. Harper sat down across from her, hands trembling in her lap. I'm not going to make excuses. What I did was unforgivable. But I need you to know it wasn't about you. Everything about this is about me, Sienna snapped. You betrayed me, Harper. The person I trusted more than anyone. Harper's voice shook. I was broken, Sienna. After the breakup with Ryan, I fell apart. I was drinking too much, sleeping all day, barely functioning. Logan checked on me when you were away. He was kind when I felt worthless. And I confused gratitude for love. Sienna stared at her sister, rage and sorrow warring in her chest. So you slept with my husband because you were sad? No, Harper whispered. Because I was selfish. And weak. And I hate myself for it every single day. You should, Sienna spat. Harper nodded, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear. And the night you found us, we were saying goodbye. I told him I was leaving town. I was going to tell you everything and beg for your forgiveness. Sienna's throat tightened. Goodbye? That's what that was. Harper nodded. I swear it. Logan spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. It was over. That night was the end. And then you came home and I saw enough to haunt me for the rest of my life, Sienna finished. Silence fell again. Sienna felt hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left her skin behind. I don't know if I can ever forgive either of you, she said finally. And I don't know if I want to. Harper sobbed quietly. Logan bowed his head. I understand. Sienna stood, her legs trembling. You both need to leave. Now. Harper opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. She nodded silently and walked out the door. Logan hesitated, lingering in the doorway. I'll wait, he whispered. As long as it takes. Don't, Sienna said. Because I'm not sure I'll ever come back. And with that he was gone too. Sienna sank onto the couch, alone again. The house was silent, but the echoes of their words, their apologies, their excuses, rang in her head. For the first time since that night she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, staring at the empty doorway, wondering how something so solid could crumble so completely. The house was so quiet Sienna could hear her own heartbeat. The kind of silence that didn't soothe, it suffocated. She sat alone on the couch for what felt like hours, staring at the front door as if it might swing open and everything would rewind to the way it was before. Before Harper. Before Logan's betrayal. Before her entire world fractured into pieces she couldn't fit back together. But the door didn't open. And the silence only deepened. The afternoon sun spilled through the living room window, lighting up dust particles floating lazily in the air. Sienna watched them drift and thought about how much time had passed, how many years she'd spent building this life. The house. The marriage. The trust. And in one night all of it was gone. She wasn't sure how long she sat there before Naomi showed up. She didn't remember calling her, but of course Naomi had tracked her phone. "You've been here all day," Naomi said softly, stepping into the room with 2 cups of coffee. "I was starting to worry you'd fused to the couch." Sienna tried to smile, but it barely registered. "I feel empty." Naomi set the coffee down and sat beside her. "That's normal. You're grieving, see." "Grieving?" Sienna echoed, her voice hollow. "Grieving what? They're still alive." "You're grieving trust," Naomi said gently. "The version of your life you thought you had. The people you thought they were." Sienna's throat tightened. "It's like everything I believed was a lie." Naomi didn't argue. She just reached over and took Sienna's hand. For a long time, they sat in silence. The only sound the occasional clink of ceramic as Sienna lifted the coffee cup to her lips and set it back down again. Finally Naomi spoke. "Do you want to talk about what happened yesterday?" Sienna exhaled shakily. "They both came. They said they were sorry. Harper said she was lonely. Logan said he felt invisible. They called it a mistake." "A 6-month mistake?" Naomi asked dryly. Sienna gave a humorless laugh. "Exactly. Did they ask for forgiveness?" "Not directly," Sienna said. "But I think that's what they want. Logan said he still loves me. Harper said she was leaving town, that she never meant for it to happen." Naomi's eyebrows lifted. "And how do you feel about that?" "I don't know." Sienna rubbed her temples. "Part of me wants to believe them. Wants to think this was just a horrible chapter we can all move past. But the other part? The other part?" Naomi prompted. "The other part wants to burn this entire house down and never speak to either of them again." Naomi nodded. "Both are valid." Sienna sighed. "It's just, they were my world, Naomi. Logan wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend. And Harper. God, she's my sister. I used to hold her when she had nightmares. I taught her how to ride a bike. And now, every memory feels poisoned." Naomi squeezed her hand. "They betrayed you, see. That doesn't erase the good memories, but it changes how you see them. And that's okay." Sienna stared out the window, watching a leaf drift lazily down from the oak tree in their yard. "I keep thinking about that night," she whispered. "Not just what I saw, but what I didn't see. All the times I was gone for work. All the excuses. The distance between us. Were they together then too? Laughing behind my back?" "Probably," Naomi said honestly. "But that's on them, not you." "But what if it is on me?" Sienna's voice broke. "What if I pushed him away? What if I wasn't present enough? What if Harper wouldn't have turned to him if I'd been a better sister?" Naomi turned to face her fully. "Stop. Right now. This isn't your fault." "But, no," Naomi said firmly. "They're adults. They made choices. They had a million opportunities to do the right thing, to talk to you, to set boundaries, to not sleep together. And they didn't. That's not on you." Sienna's eyes filled with tears. "Then why does it feel like it is?" "Because you loved them," Naomi said softly. "And when people you love betray you, your brain tries to make sense of it. Blaming yourself is easier than accepting that they did something unforgivable." Sienna's lip trembled. "I don't know if I can ever forgive them." "Then don't," Naomi said simply. "You don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them anything." Silence settled again, heavier this time but somehow comforting. Sienna rested her head on Naomi's shoulder and closed her eyes. For the first time in days the tears stopped. That night Sienna stayed in the house. She slept in the guest room. She couldn't bring herself to go back into the bedroom she once shared with Logan. The sheets were still on the bed, the same ones she'd seen tangled around his body and Harper's. She would burn them eventually, she decided. But not tonight. In the darkness, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Logan. Logan, I'll do anything to make this right. Please just give me a chance. And another from Harper. Harper, I'm leaving tomorrow. But please, can I see you one last time? Just to say goodbye properly. Sienna stared at the screen until the notifications disappeared. Then she placed the phone face down and turned away. The next morning she woke to the sound of birds outside the window. The sun was bright, the air crisp. The world was moving forward, indifferent, unstoppable, even if she wasn't ready to. She made coffee, showered, and dressed in clean clothes for the first time all week. And as she stood in the kitchen, looking out at the garden she'd once planted with Logan, she made a silent promise to herself. She would not let their choices define her. She would not let their betrayal consume every part of who she was. The silence in the house was still there, but it wasn't suffocating anymore. It was space. Space she could fill with something new. Something stronger. And though she didn't know what the future held, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never be the same woman she was before that night. And maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. The following week moved slowly, like a film playing in slow motion. Each day felt slightly easier than the one before, but the heaviness inside Sienna's chest refused to lift. She returned to Naomi's apartment after a few nights in the house. She couldn't bear sleeping under the same roof where everything had happened. Work became her refuge. She buried herself in spreadsheets, conference calls, and endless meetings, pretending that the sharp edges of her personal life didn't exist. But pretending could only go so far. No matter how many tasks she ticked off her to-do list, the silence in the spaces between them always brought her back to the same place. The betrayal, the image, the pain. One Thursday morning, Sienna woke to the sound of her phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. She groaned, pulling the covers over her head. She wasn't ready to deal with anyone. But the buzzing didn't stop. With a sigh, she reached for the phone and saw a new voicemail notification. It was from Harper. Her thumb hovered over the delete button. Every instinct told her not to listen. But curiosity or maybe desperation won. She pressed play. Hi Sienna, Harper's voice was shaky, uneven. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But before you hate me forever, I need you to hear the truth. Please, please just listen. Sienna's heart pounded as the message continued. I didn't want to hurt you. God, that's the last thing I ever wanted. But I was broken. After Ryan left me, everything fell apart. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. Some days I couldn't even get out of bed. I felt worthless, like I didn't deserve to be loved by anyone. And then Logan checked in on me. At first, it was just kindness. He'd bring groceries, sit with me, talk me through the panic attacks. And I was so grateful, I was so grateful that I confused it for something else. I fell for him. And I hate myself for it. Sienna's breath hitched. She squeezed the phone tighter. Harper's voice cracked as the message went on. It wasn't about stealing him from you. I never wanted that. And Logan, he never once said he wanted to leave you. He was lonely too, and we both made the worst mistake two people could make. But that night, the night you found us, we were saying goodbye. I told him I was leaving the city. I was going to tell you everything. I knew I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. And then you walked in and everything shattered. The voicemail ended with a long, trembling pause. Then, I'm so sorry, Sienna. I love you. I'll always love you. And I hope someday you'll remember the sister I was before I became the woman who hurt you. The message clicked off. Sienna stared at the phone, numb. For a long time she didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even breathe. Then the tears came, slow and silent at first, then in unstoppable waves. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was the first time she'd heard why. And somehow, that made everything more complicated. Later that afternoon, Logan showed up at Naomi's apartment unannounced. Naomi texted her a warning. He's here. Says he just wants to talk. Sienna hesitated. Part of her wanted to slam the door in his face. Another part, the one that still remembered how his hand felt wrapped around hers, wanted answers. Send him up, she texted back. Logan stood in the doorway looking worse than she'd ever seen him. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his shoulders slumped like a man carrying a mountain on his back. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. I almost didn't, she replied, crossing her arms. I wouldn't have blamed you. He stepped closer, searching her face. I know you listened to Harper's message. I did. Then you know the truth. Sienna shook her head. No, I know her truth. I still don't know yours. Logan exhaled, sinking into the couch. I missed you, he said. Not just physically, though I miss that too, but you. The way you used to laugh at my stupid jokes. The way we used to stay up late talking about nothing. It felt like we were losing each other piece by piece. So you fixed that by sleeping with my sister? She asked bitterly. No, he said, shaking his head. I know how it sounds, but I didn't plan it. Just happened. And once it happened, I hated myself. Every time. But the guilt wasn't enough to make me stop, and I don't expect you to understand why. Maybe I don't understand why either. Sienna stared at him, anger simmering beneath her skin. Do you still love her? No, Logan said firmly. I don't. I care about her, but I don't love her. I love you. I never stopped. You say that like it means something, she whispered. It does, he insisted. I made a mistake, a terrible, unforgivable mistake. But it didn't erase how I feel about you. Sienna scoffed. You don't betray someone you truly love. Maybe I'm not the man you thought I was, he said quietly. But please believe me when I say I never meant to destroy us. But you did, she whispered. You didn't just break my heart, Logan. You destroyed the only family I had left. Logan's eyes glistened. I know. And I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life. Silence settled over them, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Sienna spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what's next. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Or Harper. Or myself for not seeing it. Logan nodded slowly. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes. She looked at him then, really looked, and realized something had shifted. She didn't feel the same way anymore. The love she once had was still there, buried under the rubble, but it wasn't whole. It wasn't strong. It was fractured, fragile, and maybe beyond repair. You shouldn't wait for me, she said softly. Because I don't know if I'll ever come back. Logan closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. I understand. When he left, Sienna sat in silence, the voicemail still echoing in her mind. Harper's pain. Logan's regret. The messy, complicated truth behind their betrayal. It didn't make what they did right. It didn't erase the agony. But for the first time since that night, she felt something other than rage. She felt clarity. They had broken her, but she wasn't broken forever. And maybe, just maybe, the next chapter of her life wasn't about revenge or forgiveness. Maybe it was about healing. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Sienna's life. Everything looked the same, the street she drove down, the office she walked into, the coffee shop where she bought her morning latte, but nothing felt the same. It was as if she had slipped into a parallel version of her own existence, one where the foundation of everything she'd believed in had been quietly ripped away. People around her had no idea, of course. At work, colleagues congratulated her on a successful campaign launch. At brunch, friends chatted about engagements and vacation plans. Even her mother called one evening to ask if she'd thought about starting a family. Sienna smiled and nodded and gave all the right responses, but beneath the surface she was adrift. Healing, she was learning, wasn't a straight line. Some mornings she woke up and felt strong, determined to move forward. Others, she couldn't get out of bed because the image of Logan and Harper still played behind her eyelids. But as the days blurred into weeks, something began to shift. The pain was still there, it probably always would be, but it no longer defined her every waking moment. It was a scar, not an open wound. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Logan texted her again. This time the message was simple. Logan, can we meet? One last time. No pressure. I just need to say some things face to face. Sienna stared at the screen for a long time before typing a reply. Sienna, tomorrow. No. The park by our old apartment. The next day she arrived early. It was a small park, tucked between two old brick buildings with a single fountain in the center and benches scattered around the path. They'd spent countless afternoons here in the early days of their relationship, reading on the grass, sharing ice cream, talking about the future they wanted. She remembered how he used to reach for her hand when they walked, how safe she'd felt when their fingers intertwined. That memory felt like a lifetime ago. Logan showed up right on time. He looked exhausted, older somehow. Maybe betrayal aged people, she thought. Maybe it stripped away the illusion of who they were. Thank you for coming, he said softly. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, she replied, crossing her arms. Say what you need to say. He took a deep breath, exhaling slowly before he spoke. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve a conversation after what I did. But I need you to know the truth about how I feel. Sienna didn't respond. She just listened. I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me, he continued. I hurt you in a way that's unforgivable. And every single day since that night I've hated myself for it. Not a day goes by that I don't wish I could take it all back. But I can't. His voice cracked. I don't love Harper. I never did. I never stopped loving you. And if there's even a sliver of a chance that we can rebuild, even if it takes years, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Sienna swallowed hard. You think love is enough? I used to, he admitted. Now I know it's not. Trust matters more. Respect matters more. And I destroyed both. But I want to spend the rest of my life trying to earn them back. And if I can't give them back, she asked quietly, then I'll let you go, he said without hesitation. Because as much as I want you, I won't hold you hostage in a life that makes you miserable. The honesty in his words took her off guard. It wasn't a desperate plea. It was a confession, raw, unfiltered, real. And somehow that made it harder. Do you know what the worst part was? She asked after a long silence. Logan looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed. What? It wasn't the cheating, she said. It wasn't even that it was with Harper. It was that you looked happy. I walked in and you looked content. Like I hadn't even crossed your mind. His face twisted in pain. I thought about you the entire time, he whispered. Every second. And every second I knew I was destroying the person I loved most. I wish I could explain why I didn't stop. I wish I understood it myself. But I didn't stop. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Sienna stared down at her hands. You know, I used to think I'd spend my whole life with you. I thought we'd grow old together. And maybe we still could have, if it had been anyone else. But you didn't just betray your wife, Logan. You betrayed the little girl inside me who promised her baby sister she'd always protect her. His eyes filled with tears. I know. And I hate myself for that most of all. I don't hate you, she said softly, and his head snapped up in surprise. I wish I did. Would be easier. But I don't. I think part of me will always love you. And maybe that's the cruelest part of all. Logan's lips parted, but no words came out. Sienna took a deep breath. But love isn't enough anymore. Not after this. A tear slipped down his cheek. Does that mean this is goodbye? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe. Maybe not forever. But for now. I need to choose me. They stood there in silence for a long moment, rain pattering softly against the fountain. Finally Logan nodded. Then I'll let you go, he said, his voice breaking. And I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me. He turned and walked away, his figure growing smaller until it disappeared around the corner. Sienna didn't call after him. She didn't run. She just stood there, letting the rain soak through her clothes, feeling the weight of finality settle over her. And yet, beneath the ache there was something else. Something unexpected. Relief. Because for the first time since everything had fallen apart, she wasn't standing still. She was choosing herself, her peace, her healing, her future. That night, Sienna went home to her empty house. She made dinner for one. She lit a candle and poured a glass of wine. And as she curled up on the couch with a book, she realized she wasn't lonely. She was free. And freedom, she thought, felt a lot like strength. It wasn't the ending she'd once imagined, but maybe it was the beginning she truly needed. 6 months. That's how long it had been since the night everything came crashing down, since Sienna walked into her bedroom and found her world splintered beyond recognition. At first, every day had been a fight just to breathe. Then it became a fight to move forward. But now, half a year later, the fight had changed. It was no longer about surviving. It was about living. And slowly but surely she was. Her life didn't look anything like she'd imagined it would a year ago. The house she once shared with Logan had been sold. She couldn't stomach the thought of sleeping another night in those walls. Instead, she'd bought a small loft apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and shelves filled with books instead of wedding photos. It was hers, wholly, completely hers, and every inch of it felt like a fresh start. She'd also thrown herself into her career with a new kind of purpose. The heartbreak that once weighed her down now fueled her ambition. Late nights weren't a distraction anymore, they were a choice. Within 3 months she'd been promoted to regional director, a role she'd once dreamed of but never had the courage to pursue. Sometimes, she told Naomi one night over wine, rock bottom is where you finally build the foundation you were meant to stand on. Naomi had become more like family than ever, their bond forged even deeper by the fire they'd walked through together. And surprisingly, so had Sienna's circle of friends. Word of the betrayal had spread, not because she'd told anyone but because Harper had. And while pitying looks and awkward silences followed for a while, they eventually gave way to genuine support. Sienna discovered who her real friends were, and she clung to them fiercely. The biggest surprise of all came in the form of Harper. True to her word, her sister had left town the day after their confrontation. At first, Sienna ignored every attempt at communication. Every voicemail, every email, every letter that arrived in her mailbox. She wasn't ready. But Harper hadn't stopped reaching out. And over time the messages changed. They weren't desperate pleas for forgiveness anymore. They were updates. I started therapy. I found a support group. I'm working part-time at a counseling center. I'm sorry, not just for what I did to you but for the person I was when I did it. One day Sienna opened one of those letters and didn't cry. She read it all the way through. And when she set it down she realized she wasn't angry anymore. Hurt, yes. Wounded, probably forever. But the rage had burned itself out. And in its place was something quieter, not forgiveness exactly but peace. It was the first time she considered that maybe, someday forgiveness might come. Logan had tried a few more times to see her too. Flowers on her birthday, a letter left on her doorstep, a Christmas card with a simple message, I hope you're happy. I still think of you every day. But unlike Harper, his attempts faded over time. Eventually he stopped reaching out altogether. And that, too, was a kind of closure. On a rainy Sunday morning, Sienna sat by the window of her new apartment, laptop open, cursor blinking over a blank page. She had been toying with the idea for weeks, writing about what happened. Not for a book, not for revenge, but for herself. To give meaning to the mess. To make sense of the chaos. She titled the document, My Husband Cheated on Me with My Sister. But it saved us both. The words flowed easier than she expected. She wrote about the betrayal, the night she came home early, the sight that shattered her. She wrote about the anger and the numbness, the sleepless nights, the moments she questioned her own worth. But she also wrote about what came after. The strength she didn't know she had, the people who stood by her, the woman she was becoming. And when she got to the part of the story most people would never understand, she wrote this. But it saved us both. It forced Harper to confront her demons, the ones that had been eating her alive long before that night. It pushed her into therapy, into recovery, into a version of herself I'd always hoped she'd become. And it forced me to confront mine too, the way I buried myself in work to avoid the cracks in my marriage, the way I stayed silent instead of speaking up about what I needed. It ended a marriage that, if I'm honest, had been dying quietly for years. It ended a version of myself that was too afraid to put herself first. And it ended a pattern. One where I defined my worth by how well I could hold other people together. I don't thank them for what they did. I never will. But I thank the universe for breaking me when it did. Because now I'm building something stronger. She read the words over and over, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. They weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of release. Of relief. When she finally hit publish, posting the essay anonymously on a blog she'd started, she didn't expect anyone to read it. But within days it spread. Thousands of women commented, sharing their own stories of betrayal and healing. Dozens of emails flooded her inbox, thanking her for her honesty, for showing them that broken didn't mean ruined. And for the first time in 6 months, Sienna felt like something beautiful had grown from the wreckage. Weeks later she met Harper for coffee. It was awkward and emotional, but it wasn't angry. They talked, really talked, for the first time since everything happened. They didn't fix things that day. Some wounds would always ache. But there was love there still, and it was enough to start again, slowly. And one evening months later she even saw Logan across the street in the city. They locked eyes briefly. He gave a small, sad smile and nodded once. A silent acknowledgement of everything they had been and everything they no longer were. She nodded back, then walked away without looking back. Sienna Gray had been broken. Shattered. Brought to her knees by the people she trusted most. But she had rebuilt herself, stronger, wiser, and finally wholly her own. The night that once defined the end of her story had become the prologue of a new one. And as she stood on the balcony of her apartment, city lights flickering below, she whispered to herself, not as a wish but as a promise. This is not the end. This is where I begin. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next story.